Welcome to the Fast Track for Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement Tech Talk series. This Tech Talk is on application lifecycle management. Over the course of the next hour, we will discuss the following areas: an overview of application lifecycle management and how to approach developing an ALM strategy, environment and storage planning and management, solution management, deploying solutions, tools for automation, and an automation demo. We hope that when you complete this presentation, you have the following: an understanding of the basic concepts of application lifecycle management with Dynamics 365 model-driven apps, how to approach developing an ALM strategy, understanding instance management and how having the right number and type of these environments can simplify your development process, a basic understanding of solutions, including the different types available and how to manage, package, validate, and deploy them, how to include new Power Platform components in your solutions, how to automate or at least have a basic understanding of automation for your DevOps model using Azure Build Tools, and finally, a basic understanding of testing automation using EasyRepro. Let's get started. This is our friend Bill, and Bill's a little confused. He's been looking online for definitions of application lifecycle management, and there are a lot of them to be sure. But succinctly defined, application lifecycle management, or ALM, represents the governance, development, deployment, and ongoing maintenance of computer applications. For our discussion today, we will consider computer applications to represent the Dynamics 365 model-driven apps and solutions you create to enable and enact your business processes and outcomes, and some of the processes, tools, and best practices available to assist you. Well, while we thought we answered Bill's question, clearly it's led him to another. When you develop an ALM strategy, all you really need to do is follow a basic application lifecycle model. Plan and track, develop, build and test, deploy, operate, and monitor and learn. This is how you follow every single release, from your implementation release through all of your subsequent releases. But how do you turn that into an actual strategy? Well, the first thing you should do is consider your development approach. Are you rapid development, agile? Are you waterfall? What type of development methodology are you going to follow? What types of development do you need? You need web developers, .NET developers, cloud developers? What type of team do you need? What skills? How big? What structure? What number and type of and storage for CDS instances? How are you going to manage source control and your backlog? What's your testing model? Your deployment model? And how do you do your operate and maintain model, where you build new releases subsequently taking user requirements and creating new releases with new feature and functionality every period of time? What automation tooling and approach are you going to use? And finally, and most important, what is the glue that holds this all together, or your governance model? While by no means a comprehensive list, the following slide shows you some of the processes, tools, and areas of best practice that we will address during this discussion. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see a link where you can get more detailed documentation on the ALM processes available for the Power Platform. Now we'll take a minute to discuss environment and storage planning and management. One critical element of environment planning is determining your instance strategy. Simply put, this is a physical representation of your logical application lifecycle, from development to QA, to user acceptance testing, training and staging, and finally to production. You need to define the instance requirements necessary to support the ideation, build, and operation of your business. This should also facilitate project decisions, such as your development model, your go-live approach, where to conduct a POC, user acceptance testing, hot fix, break fix, identifying what instances are needed and when. Dynamics 365 instances provide basic capability for you to migrate solutions between instances. However, you can consider using a just-in-time instance deployment model and build from source with correct data sets and accomplish the goal of the instance required. Using a just-in-time model facilitates source control centricity, eliminates dependencies on specific instances, and allows you to validate your deployment process each time you deploy. When determining your instance strategy, you need to be aware of the instance types available to you. For Dynamics 365 model-driven apps, there are two types of instances, a sandbox instance or a production instance. Sandbox instances are designed for development and test activities. They offer a lower resource budget and have no performance expectations. Production instances are designed for commercial use. They offer a greater resource budget and greater resiliency along with dynamic scalability. As you can see from our models shown previously, the logical application lifecycle model that's physicalized can be used with different types of instances. Development, primarily sandbox. QA, sandbox. UAT, depending on your requirements, could be sandbox or production. Training and staging. For training, a lot of customers want that environment to be very production-like, and so a production instance would be plausible. For staging, since staging doesn't require anything but a copy of your solution that you're going to migrate to production, it can be a sandbox instance. And then finally, your production instance, of course. There are other environment types, but these are the only ones relevant for Dynamics 365 model-driven apps. It's also important to understand how you need to manage your instances. You can manage your instances from the Power Platform admin portal, as you can see in the screenshot below. For more information, you can take the Tenant Administration TechTalk, and you can also learn more at the link below. While having instances and knowing how many you need is important, it's even more important to understand how much storage you're going to plan for them to consume. This is critical to have a successful ALM strategy. If you understand how much storage your ALM process requires, you will understand better what you're going to need from your initial deployment and as you grow over time. You also need to make sure that you understand your storage model. Are you in the legacy model? That is just one aggregate number of all the types of storage, or are you in the new model, which segregates database, log, and file storage? You can see your model, overall storage capacity, total usage, and usage by instance at the link shown on the screen. Also, the screenshot gives you an example of what you will see when you look at yours. Please take note that all storage is represented at the tenant level, even if it's aggregated and allocated at each of the levels specified, database, log, and file. Let's take a look at an example. You see the application lifecycle we've been discussing: dev, QA, UAT, training and staging, and production. Just for the sake of definition, base environments are considered the current active environments. The environments marked with an asterisk are optional and can be employed to either expand capability or maintain prod equivalent copies. We recommend that dev environments should be kept relatively small. QA environments should only have enough data to validate current scenarios, and then if you have new scenarios, you can add data to them. User acceptance testing environments should only maintain sufficient data to allow users to test end-to-end scenarios, inclusive of any functionality. And training and staging environments, while completely different and have different requirements, kind of live in the same tier. But training environments may contain a lot of data, and so you want to ensure that you can address all user scenarios. Staging environments really don't need application data, and they're typically just a production equivalent placeholder you use before you deploy your solution to production. When you look at our example, you can see that there are multiple environments in each of these areas of the lifecycle. This is important because the idea that you could have multiple environments for development is good. It allows your developers to have a bit more independence and flexibility. However, you do need a base development solution so that you can aggregate all of the developed solutions from your developers together and then migrate that as a single solution or set of solutions to each of your other environments. However, looking at the storage consumption, you can see that as we move from tier to tier, the amount of storage required increases dramatically. Across all of these different areas of our lifecycle, with all of the instances we have, we're consuming over 232.3 gigabytes of storage. And the optional instances consume over half of that. This can become quite problematic if you are solely dependent upon the storage that is allocated to you based on the number of users you have, and you haven't purchased any additional storage. The point here being that you do need to clearly understand and define your approximate storage needs before you start deploying a complex instance model. This is addressed in more detail in our tenant administration tech talk. You also want to ensure your storage management strategy includes accounting for growth over time and enough additional capacity to address potentially unforeseen needs, like extra proof of concepts, or significantly unplanned data growth, like an acquisition. Make sure that you've determined your needs and that you purchase sufficient additional capacity for your model well in advance of needing it to protect yourself from delays in proceeding with your implementation. Because if you are over your storage limit, you will not be allowed to allocate additional instances until you have resolved that problem. So let's talk about solution management. We'll start with what should be a refresher for you, but we'll give you some background on solution basics. So what is a solution? Well, solutions are how developers author, package, and maintain units of software that extend Dynamics 365 apps. They must be associated with a publisher, and solution files are zipped XML configuration files containing all definitions, configurations, customizations, and any other necessary components related to that solution. As you can see in the diagram to the right, there are 4 areas that we consider when talking about the components of a solution. The data model, which can be entities and anything related to the entity, and global option sets. User interface can be web resources, JavaScript libraries, dashboards, etc. Processes and code can contain assemblies with custom activities or plugins, and workflow definitions like Power Automate, business process, and rules. And then, of course, things like reports, templates, security roles, etc. are all grouped in the other category. When developing solutions, there are 2 types available: unmanaged and managed. An unmanaged solution is essentially a logical container of customizations existing on top of the system and managed solutions. We like to say unmanaged solutions are developed. You can see some of the attributes of an unmanaged solution below. For managed solutions, we consider this a version-complete, unmanaged solution that has been exported as managed that you will deploy in your other environments. Or in other words, managed solutions are deployed. Below are also some attributes of the managed solution. We also recommend that you please follow the link below and read more information on both managed and unmanaged solution types. When we talk about publishers for a solution, what we mean is that publishers are a solution-related entity that represents the owner of a solution and the assets contained within. Publishers are located in your instance under UCI by selecting the Settings wheel, Advanced Settings, and then under the Settings categories, choose Customization and then Publishers. Please note, several publishers are created by default when you get a new instance of Dynamics 365. Do not use or change any of the default publishers provided with your instance. You can create your own publishers using the New button. It does not have to be associated with a system user, but only system customizers and system administrators can use them. Publishers may also be added for third-party, which are ISV or partner-managed solutions that you deploy. This is a critical tool in helping you to manage governance of your solution development. Another key element of understanding solutions is layering. Layers describe the dependency chain of a component from the root solution that introduces it through each solution that extends or changes that component's behavior. Layers are created through extension of an existing component where it creates a dependency, or through creation of a new component or version of a solution. Layering occurs on import of solutions when a specific component is affected by a change within one or more imported solutions. Layers should be considered on a per-component basis. Although the diagram to the right is typically drawn to convey the effect of a solution on another solution, technically, this is evaluated at the component or subcomponent level. As we've mentioned before, segmentation is the means by which you can physically partition solution components to reduce both the complexity and size of a given solution. Segmentation will be established when you select or add only the specific components you need while creating or updating a solution. You need to avoid including all assets for any entity that already exists in the target environment of your solution. For more information, please see the link below. With the creation of the Power Platform, we now give you the ability to manage solutions within the Power Apps interface. You can pretty much do any functionality that you need with a solution within this interface. How to leverage this interface is shown in the slide below. Next, we'll talk about the steps necessary to build solutions. Here's a very simple pre-development checklist that you can use for your developers when they start building solutions. Make sure they're using the appropriate publisher created for their solutions. Make sure they follow defined segmentation governance when choosing components that they will modify. Select and add only the components necessary for the development of their new solution. And finally, as mentioned before, avoid including all components for an entity unless the entity does not already exist in your target instance. Here is a simple example of solution segmentation. You have 3 developers and a system administrator. BJ and Carol are both web developers and customizers. Ralph is a C# developer, probably a .NET guy. And Tamika is your system admin. In this example, VJ has been given responsibility for the sales module and all of the components within it. Carol has responsibility for service and all of the entities within that. Ralph will be responsible for developing plugins, connectors, logic apps, virtual entities, integrations, and generic custom controls. And then Tamika is responsible for maintaining the sitemap, the command ribbon, solution publishers, the security model, field level security profiles, and other things. As you can see, segmentation allows for multiple developers to work within the bounds of a single instance and potentially within a single solution if necessary, as it provides a relative easy means of avoiding most component conflicts. You should ensure your governance process provides an effective mechanism to resolve cross-entity conflicts in the instance that your segmentation model doesn't account for a particular entity or component collision. Development release notes are an easy way for your developers to identify the impacted entities and components for each version of the solution they create or update. In summary, here are some publisher benefits. They can be associated with multiple solutions. They can effectively identify which set of components a solution addresses or should address. They define the customizations prefix and base option set values. And it's very important, when you import new assets through a managed solution, the associated publisher becomes the owner of those assets. We recommend that you use publishers to help define how you segment solution development to facilitate the management of configuration, customization, and other components. For more information on segmentation and solution publishers, please see the document links below. Here are some additional benefits of solution segmentation. They reduce collisions caused by multiple team members working on assets of a component, such as an entity. Solutions are smaller and less complex, which simplifies ongoing management. More complex solutions decrease your solution import time. You also reduce the code base stored in your source control. It provides easy traceability for potential errors introduced into a solution. And it can facilitate rapid development models where time to implement is critical. There are new components included with the Power Platform that you may want to include in your solutions. One of the most powerful features of the new Power Platform is the ability to embed Canvas apps in your model-driven apps. Embedded Canvas apps are solution-aware and exist in the solution in which they were created or added, like any other custom control. You should ensure that you consider your user security model when sharing an embedded Canvas app and deploying it in different environments. There are important ALM limitations and considerations with this feature. For more information, please see the following link. The new Power Platform components also give you the ability to embed Power Automate flows into your existing solutions. You can log into Power Automate, select Solutions from the navigation bar. Select the solution in which you'll create the new Power Automate flow. Select New, then select Flow, and the Power Automate Maker opens. Build your flow with the appropriate connectors and triggers, and then save your flow when you're done. It's important to note, importing a solution containing a flow will not automatically create or associate required connections. The flow must be edited to fix the connections. If you're using managed solutions, this creates an active customization in the unmanaged layer. Therefore, subsequent solution updates to the flow will not be reflected. For a more detailed description of this and other Power Automate tasks, please see the link at the bottom of this page. The Power Apps Component Framework is a very powerful framework that allows Canvas app-like controls to be created for use in both model-driven and Canvas apps. It allows you to build custom controls but still leverage our low-code, no-code methodology. For deployment, if you plan to create a generic library of PCF components for your configuration team to leverage, make sure to include these in a separate managed solution. As a best practice, we recommend that when you establish a segmentation model for your solutions, you include the most appropriate model for packaging and deploying PCF controls for your organization. For more information, please see the links below at this page. Another new feature that's included with the Power Platform are environment variables. While still in public preview, these allow you to transport in-app configuration data or maintain specific configuration data to an environment in your solutions, eliminating the need to store it in custom entities and migrate it with tools like the configuration migration utility. These are stored in a solution as a component leveraging key value pairs, which means they can also be managed with source control. For more information regarding environment variables, their usage and deployment options, see the following blog post and documentation links below. And now some fine print. Some of the features covered in this discussion are still in or recently discharged from preview status. Please ensure that you check the publicly provided documentation on each of these to understand the current and known limitations with each and are prepared to handle accordingly within your implementation. Additionally, please note that any feature in a state of preview is not supported for production deployment. Once you have completed your solution development, we recommend that you validate your solution with the Solution Checker. The Solution Checker provides you the ability to have your solution verified against documented best practices, known deprecations, standard performance challenges, and other items. We recommend as a best practice, you should run the Solution Checker against every solution you plan to publish and/or distribute. You can do this very simply. You enable the Solution Checker solution. You run it against your existing solution. You can then review and act on the results. For more information on the Solution Checker, please see the link at the bottom of this page. Here are some additional benefits for using the Solution Checker as part of your ALM. It validates your solutions and provides issue details and guidance. It identifies best practice violations, feature function deprecations, JavaScript inefficiencies, and other items. You should run it anytime you make changes to a solution before promoting that solution as a managed solution in later environments. Currently, the Solution Checker only works with model-driven apps. You may find detailed documentation on the feature by clicking on the link here. In addition to the out-of-the-box tools that are available to you through the Power Platform and Power Apps portals, there are additional tools that you can leverage to help you with your solution management. SolutionPackager is one of these tools. SolutionPackager is a command line tool that can be used to both decompose and recompose solution files. It's available as part of the Microsoft CRM SDK Core Tools NuGet package. Decomposition allows for individual XML files to be created in a definable structure that can then be integrated into a source control system or other means of safe archival. Recomposition is primarily aimed at users of source control that have made changes to different components of a solution and are now ready to move that active solution back into the appropriate development instance. Another tool that you can leverage as part of your solution management pack is source control. Source control enables you to have a greater degree of control at a granular level over the different types of components within an MDA solution. You can leverage a source control system to provide tasks not available out of the box with model-driven apps, like branching and merging. Source control centricity helps you to achieve healthy ALM because the assets maintained in the source control system are the single source of truth. You can use any source control system that supports extension and automation using the Power Apps command line interface, or Power Apps CLI, PowerShell, or custom code. Here are additional documentation links that you can read to gain a better understanding of how various tools for solution management can be implemented as part of your ALM strategy and automation methods. Now let's talk about the methods for deploying solutions. First, we'll talk about the manual method. When we talk about deploying manually, what we're really referring to is that you leverage the Power Platform and Power Apps portals to do the majority of the work. But let's talk through the process. So the first thing that you do when it comes to doing your solution development is you create your solution and you do your solution development activities. Once that's complete, you then run your solution checker, and if everything checks out and you've got everything ready to go, you export your solution from that environment as a managed solution. Then you take that solution, you import it into your test environment, you make sure that you select the appropriate options. Once the solution is imported, you test your changes. If there's any errors, you fix them. Otherwise, you're ready to deploy to production. And with production, you just want to make sure that you schedule your import in an off-hours window. You ensure that there is limited user activity happening in the system. Then, you import your managed solution that you had created and exported from your development environment. It's simple, but it should be managed with governance, because there are opportunities for human error during this process. So let's take a look at what that looks like. The first thing that you do after you've got your solution finished and you've done your development work and you validated it in your development instance is you export your solution. You can go to make.powerapps.com, select your solution, and then just choose Export in the toolbar. The export process will run and it will create a zip file that contains all of the solution XML files. You should make sure that when you extract your solution, you extract it as a managed solution. When you're ready to import your solution, you simply go to the Power Apps portal and you select the appropriate environment. In the upper right-hand corner, under Environment, there's a drop-down. You click the drop-down and pick the environment that is your target for your solution that you're going to import. Then, you press Import on the toolbar. Then you press Choose File, and you select your local zip file solution that you exported from your dev environment, and you click Next. If you didn't make any changes when the file was being exported, it should be in your Downloads folder. However, choose the appropriate folder that contains your managed solution that you want to import. Identify that file, select it, and then press Open. Then you will see a window like the window on the lower right-hand side of the screen. If that is correct and everything looks good, press Next. If you have not imported this solution before into this target environment, you will see a screen like the screen in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, and it will start the import process. However, if there is a solution in your target environment and you are bringing in a new version of that same solution, you will see a screen like the screen to the center that says Import Options. You select the options that are appropriate for what you're looking to do when you import the managed solution. If everything looks good, you then press Import. Then the import process will begin and your screen will resemble the screen like the upper left-hand corner. When it completes, or if there are errors, you will have the opportunity to capture the log file so you can see the details of the failing process and where the error occurred. If the import was successful, make sure once it's complete to select Publish Customizations in the target environment. Go to your target environment and validate that your changes are active and working. If everything looks good, you can now deploy that same solution into any other target instance, like your production. For more information on importing solutions and updating and upgrading solutions, please see the links below. Now we will discuss a tool that is a key player in both the solution management process and the solution deployment process, as well as potentially any automation and integration with source control that you may use, the package deployer. The package deployer is a powerful tool that can assist you with deploying applications comprising of multiple solutions and configuration data, as well as any custom code that you may need to work with your implementation. A Visual Studio project template is provided to construct package definitions. The project can be version controlled and it can be used in the build process. The basic steps are this. You create a package project, you add your files, solutions, and data, and potentially custom code. You define your custom code that's going to trigger your process, and you check in your project. Sometimes you find it necessary to create functionality that doesn't exist in the out-of-the-box Dynamics 365 customer engagement apps. When you have to do that, you usually implement that with custom entities. The configuration migration tool is designed explicitly to help you move that type of configuration information from one instance to another as part of your deployment process. As I mentioned before, the configuration migration tool is designed to migrate custom functionality configuration data from one environment to another. The configuration data defined in the Unified Service Desk application for Dynamics 365 is a good example of the entities that would have to be migrated using the configuration migration tool. This tool is not designed to be an end-user data migration tool. Here you can see a basic flow and the functionality of the configuration migration tool. For more information, please see the link at the bottom of this page. Now let's discuss some of the tools necessary for automation of your build and deployment processes. Azure DevOps gives you unique functionality that can assist you at every stage of your build and deployment cycle, from initiate to build to release. The initial build pipeline can instantiate a pristine development environment every day. The build pipeline automates manual steps. You don't need to upload Solution Checker and manually export the solution, unpacked, and pushed to repro. Automated release pipeline removes manual steps. Weekly, daily, or hourly releases can become the new standard. You can also leverage the Power Apps build tools. Power Apps build tools can simplify and automate tasks related to Power Apps functionality, like synchronization of solution metadata between development environments and source control. It can generate build artifacts. You can deploy to downstream environments. You can provision and deprovision environments. You can perform a static analysis check against your solution using the Power Apps Checker service. If you decided that you wanted to implement continuous integration and you needed to provision instances to do this, this is a model that you could use. As you can see, you have your solution, version control, and build agent. You build the queue and it initiates the org creation. The build agent then pulls sources from the version control and produces the build. The solution or package is then deployed to the instance. Then you do your development work. Then once that's complete, the solution checker runs and the code and configuration is pushed to source control and the instance is destroyed. You can then run your automated tests and deploy your solution. With your build process, you can extract from development, store in source control, and import that into your build organization. Then you extract it from the build org and create your managed solution. Then you can import the managed solution into your upstream orgs. Now let's take a minute and we'll talk about test automation using EasyRepro. EasyRepro is a tool that was developed internally at Microsoft by our PFEs and our fast track engineers. Maybe you're asking yourself, or someone in your organization is asking, what benefit do we really get out of test automation? Well, test automation can provide significant ROI on your development process. It becomes very important for one version to make sure that there is one true version of your software. It abstracts test case implementation from UI control implementation. It's intuitive and very easy to get up and running. And it can be executed as part of your DevOps pipeline. EasyRepro satisfies all of these conditions. EasyRepro is also based on industry standard unit testing models. It supports various testing needs, like smoke, regression, and load testing, as well as others. While it does require some time investment for initial learning and setup, you need to get started now, and I think that you'll find it's much easier to use. You can see an example of EasyRepro output on the right-hand side of the screen, and the blog post below gives you all the information that you need to get up and running with EasyRepro. Now let's take a look at our automation demo using the Power Apps build tools and Azure DevOps for deployment automation.
This is the fast track for Dynamics 365 Application Lifecycle Management TechTalk Build Automation Demo. The prerequisites for this deck are understanding the Dynamics ALM concepts as part of the ALM TechTalk. This demo also uses 5 environments: a base solution development, a line of business development org, a build org, a QA org, and a production org. Prior to running these build pipelines, I had created one custom unmanaged solution in the dev base environment and one custom unmanaged solution in the dev line of business environment. I created those with a custom publisher because I did not want to use one of the default publishers as per the guidance in the ALM Tech Talk. The first step is to create a empty base solution in your base solution dev environment, and then bring that solution with nothing in it into your dev solution or to your source control. So we install the Power App platform tools, we set the solution version, publish customizations, export the solution, run solution checker, unpack the solution, and commit that solution to branch. You'll be rerunning this as you're continuing to develop so that all the changes that you're bringing in will run through this process. If we jump over to see this live, we can pop into our source environment into Azure DevOps, and you can see I've just installed the solution. I've set the version number using 2 variables, which we'll talk about in just a second. I publish my platform customizations. I export my solution using a solution name variable. I run the Power Apps platform checker, and then I unpack the solution and eventually commit it to my repo. Those variables that I talked about are pretty straightforward. I have a name of the solution, which is build automation base, and I have the solution version number as a major version. Now, I've set these at so that they're able to be set at queue time, so that if I wanted to change those solution names or major version, I can do that as I'm running my build. If I just click run here, this will go through and start kicking off the agent job. The next thing I do is repeat that process for my line of business solution. This could be separated by line of business or business process or even type, but I do the exact same steps. I install the Power Up tool, set the version, publish customizations, eventually commit that back to my sprint branch. Now that I have all of my solutions into my source control system and I'm ready to start doing additional development, I need to go get latest for my line of business solution. This assumes that we've already built our base and we're working through that as part of this process. So again, I install the Power Tools, I pack the base solution, I import the unmanaged base solution into my build org this time and export it as managed. And then I import that managed version of the base solution into my line of business dev org as managed. I then pack the line of business dev org from source control and import that solution as unmanaged. Now my solution inside of my environment has my build automation base solution as managed and my build automation line of business solution as unmanaged in that environment so that I can continue to do dev work. And if I flip over to source control, we can take a look at that pipeline. As you can see, I've got the solutions here. I build my build automation base. I import that into my build environment. I export it as managed and then import that into my dev environment as managed, pack my line of business solution and import that line of business solution into my dev environment. Now that I've completed all of the dev work and I'm ready for that to go to QA, I follow a very similar process. I pack the base solution, import it as unmanaged into my base solution org, export it as managed out to my QA org. I do the same for the line of business org, and then I run my EasyRepro steps so that I can validate that all of my UI testing completes successfully, and eventually, have the QA team go in and do more of their manual testing. If I flip over to the source control, we can actually take a look at what that looks like. Again, I've got my platform installer, I'm packing my base solution. We've already run through these steps. I am exporting all of those solutions from the build org, and then importing them both into the QA org. At this moment, I'm doing a couple of best practices for EasyRepro and setting my screen resolution, building my EasyRepro solution, and installing the test assemblies. The thing that's different here is that I have a test filter criteria so that I'm only running the tests that I want to run. And I've basically decorated those test methods with the test category. And we can actually look at what that looks like if I come over here to my repos. And look at the UCI samples that I have. If I look at create account, you can see that I've decorated that test method with my test category. And so that tells the solution what it should be running because it's only looking for tests that match that criteria. Now that I've completed all of my QA and all of the code tests out perfectly, I'm ready to start planning for my prod deployment. And the way that we do this is we're going to create a pull request to merge those changes into the master. And if I flip over here to my dev environment, or my DevOps environment, I can find the pull request under the repo section and just simply create a new pull request, give it a name, and we can call this demo, and create that pull request. Now that my pull request is created, the next thing I need to do is approve and complete and then eventually close my pull request. And you may have a very complicated approval process that goes through multiple reviewers. There may be work items that are associated with it and so forth. So what I'm going to show is just a very simplistic version of that. If I jump over to my Azure DevOps, you can see the pull request that we've just created. I'm going to go ahead and approve that pull request, which then drops it down into the approve. Before I actually complete the pull request, I wanted to call out something that I do to make sure that I don't break anything that has been configured for my pipelines. In most of my pipelines, except for as you'll see here in a minute when we go to the master branch, I rely on a branch that I call Sprint, and my pipelines are dependent on that. When I complete this pull request, it asks me if I want to delete that branch after merging. And I uncheck that box so that it keeps my Sprint branch intact so that I don't have to go reconfigure each of my pipelines. So if I just flip back over to our DevOps, you can see that checkbox is unchecked. And when I complete this merge, it will leave my repos intact so that I have the branch for Sprint and the branch for master. And you can see that here. So now that I have all of that merged back to master, now I'm ready to create the pipeline to build those packages so that I can include them in the release. It's very straightforward, similar to what we've seen. We're packing the base solution, importing to the build orgs, coming out as managed, and then we're publishing artifacts, one artifact for each base solution. If I switch over to our Azure DevOps, you can see I'm packing that base solution, importing it, so forth and so on. And then I'm storing those as pipeline artifacts so that I can use them in my release pipeline. So now that I have my build task done, I'm ready to create my release pipeline and add the artifacts from the build, and then eventually deploy that into my production environment. So I have the artifacts for the build managed solution pipeline that I've just created, and then I have some stages that will actually import the base solution and a line of business solution to the production environment. So if we switch over, we can see what that looks like. I've got this build managed solution, and basically this tells me the source pipeline that I'm using it and what version to use. And then if I look at the stages, I can have multiple stages. This particular stage has 3 tasks. It installs the tools. It imports the solution from my artifacts that have been created. And you can see there's a base and the line of business solution. And that's it for the build automation demo. Although there is one other point that I want to just call out, that it is possible to deploy these solutions with the build tools using Package Deployer rather than doing individual build steps. And I've got a couple of samples of what that might look like. You basically build your package in source control and then update the config file and push those out. But that should be for a later discussion on build automation. Thank you.
So now let's talk about a few key points as they relate to deploying solutions. In the past, Microsoft did not make an explicit recommendation regarding using unmanaged or managed solutions. However, because of significant challenges created by using and deploying only unmanaged solutions, like inconsistent development governance, no ability to successfully implement sustainable source control, seeing customer attempts at automation and continuous integration be very complex and ultimately unsuccessful, and finally, significant customer, partner, and Microsoft effort hours were expended to resolve dependency conflicts or errant code deployed in Dynamics 365 online instances. We now recommend, as a best practice, that you build unmanaged and deploy managed. That is the best practice model for managing solutions with all Dynamics 365 legacy and model-driven apps. So what are the key takeaways from our discussion today? Well, Dynamics development is moving from instance-centric to source control-centric development, providing you with greater control over your development processes. Remember, unmanaged solutions are for development only. Managed solutions are to be deployed to all non-development organizations. Don't wait to automate. Build automation starts before any customizations or code is ever developed. Oh, look, it's our friend Bill, and he's back with a question. That's all great stuff, but what do I do next? Well, Bill, I'm glad you asked that. Let's talk about what to do next. The first thing we recommend that you do is a solution health check of all existing and in-flight projects. Do you have build automation? Are you deploying managed solutions to non-development environments? Do you have ALM? Is your process working? Are you using source control? Are you using disposable development environments with developer isolation? Are you capable of servicing your production instance while still working on your next release? Is your solution created correctly? Are you using supported techniques? Single publisher? Are you validating with Solution Checker? Are you using separate environments for each solution? These are important questions to ask yourself to validate the solution health and ALM health of your organization. Then, we recommend that you go and read the ALM documentation posted in the docs.microsoft.com website. Our product group has done significant work to encapsulate everything related to application lifecycle management with the Microsoft Power Platform in this location, and there's a tremendous amount of information available. Make sure that you also review the Implement Healthy ALM scenarios that are appropriate for your organization. And finally, implement Healthy ALM. On behalf of the entire Microsoft Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement Apps Fast Track team, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this TechTalk presentation on application lifecycle management. We hope that you have found the information helpful. Make sure to watch the other Tech Talks in this series for more information on how to best implement Dynamics 365 customer engagement apps in your organization. If you have any questions, you can leverage the ALM documentation we've discussed, our online learning, Dynamics 365 online communities, your account team or reseller, Premier Support, or if you are a current Dynamics 365 Fast Track customer, your assigned Fast Track solution architect. Thank you again, and have a great day.